Tensions were high while the Beatles worked on their eponymous 1968 double album. As relations between band members became strained, all four members worked in different studios at different times, trying to bring their visions to life. Paul McCartney was the worst offender in this regard, recording 4 of the album's tracks without any of the other Beatles. One song that was almost a McCartney solo piece was Why Don't We Do It in the Road. Featuring just McCartney and Ringo Starr, the plaintive blues track was written by McCartney while the Beatles were studying Transcendental Meditation in India. When McCartney saw an impulsive act of fornication between 2 animals, he was inspired to write down the simple track. I was up on the flat roof meditating, and I'd seen a troop of monkeys walking along in the jungle, and a male just hopped onto the back of this female and gave her one, as they say in the vernacular, McCartney explained in the book Many Years From Now. Within 2 or 3 seconds, he hopped off again and looked around as if to say, "It wasn't me." And she looked around as if there had been some mild disturbance, but thought, "Huh, I must have imagined it," and she wandered off. And I thought, bloody hell, that puts it all into a cocked hat. That's how simple the act of procreation is. This bloody monkey just hopping on and hopping off. There is an urge, they do it, and it's done with, McCartney added. And it's that simple. We have horrendous problems with it, and yet animals don't. So that was basically it. Why don't we do it in the road? Could have applied to either fucking or shitting, to put it roughly. Why don't we do either of them in the road? Well, the answer is we're civilized and we don't. But the song was just to pose that question. Why don't we do it in the road? Was a primitive statement to do with sex or to do with freedom, really? I like it. It's just so outrageous that I like it. On October 8th, 1968, 3 of the Beatles were working on mixing the continuing story of Bungalow Bill and Long, Long, Long. It was John Lennon's birthday, perhaps explaining why he wasn't present. As these songs were getting attention, McCartney grabbed engineer Ken Townsend and recorded a few solo takes of Why Don't We Do It in the Road. The next night, after John Lennon and George Harrison added strings to Piggies and Glass Onion, McCartney and Starr finished Why Don't We Do It in the Road. We were mixing in Studio 2, which was really the dedicated Beatles studio at Abbey Road, and I was getting a bit fed up sitting around. McCartney said in his book, The Lyrics, 1956 to the present. Everyone had gone home, but we were still there at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight. There was no one else around except for a security sergeant, maybe somebody on the door. So I slipped into Studio 3 with Ringo, just him and me. I wanted to do a Let It All Hang Out song based on little more than a mantra. Lennon was resentful that he was excluded from the song's recording. Although he wound up recording Julia on his own 4 days later, McCartney was still present, giving Lennon advice from the control room. During one of his final interviews, Lennon misremembered Why Don't We Do It in the Road as a McCartney solo recording and explained his position. He couldn't make the break from the Beatles. I don't know what it was, you know. I enjoyed the track. Still, I can't speak for George, but I was always hurt when Paul would knock something off without involving us. But that's just the way it was then. But Mecca disagreed. It wasn't a deliberate thing. John and George were tied up finishing something, and me and Ringo were free, just hanging around. So I said to Ringo, let's go and do this. Anyway, he did the same with Revolution 9. McCartney insisted to Hunter Davies in his book, The Beatles, the illustrated and updated edition. He went off and made that without me. No one ever says that. John is the nice guy and I'm the bastard. It gets repeated all the time.